Now that looks nice. But almost $4,000. And I have to pay for shipping. That's ridiculous. What is this? 4 grand to nap somewhere outside. And I need 2 of them. It's not happening. And so I designed and made an all-wooden lounger for under $100 with all the bells and whistles of the most expensive sun loungers. And I made a step-by-step instruction of how to do it, with a full cut list. If you want to support this channel, grab yourself a copy in the link below. It only costs a couple of bucks. But enough talk, let's get to cutting. First things first, I put my seasoned wood through a thicknesser, which, I'll be honest with you, was very satisfying, especially since I could do it so much quicker than using a sander, which I used to do in the past. Then I cut all of my pieces of wood to their desired width, and ironically creating a safety hazard in the process. Even more ironic considering that my last video was about the table saw safety. Anyway, just like in that video, turn off the table saw, restart your cut and learn from your dumb mistakes. Then I cut all of the pieces into the right length. I suggest to do it all in one go, especially if you're confident with your measurements. And once you have all of your pieces, it's time to create the frame of the sun lounger, which is really simple to make, and a lot simpler if you have the exact assembly instructions. I started joining it using dowels, but then I pretty quickly realized that I'm not really patient enough to do it this way. Because if I use dowels, then I'd have to wait a couple of hours before doing anything else while the glue dries. And so I just used 2 dowels on the inside and added a long screw to keep it together. Overkill? Yes, absolutely. But it did save me quite a long time. Now, to hide the screws, I made an 8mm hole, put the Torx screw through it and then plugged it using a dowel, which then I just simply cut off. Simple and quick, and it does look really nice. Now, in order for the backrest to be properly secured, the hinge needs to be sitting nicely on its base, which requires a lot of creative angles and cutting. And to be absolutely honest with you, I really didn't want to measure it all separately on this piece of wood. So what I did, and what you can find in the PDF of the build, is a printout which you can just simply glue onto the wood using a double-sided tape and then just use those measurements to make a cut, which just makes it so much simpler. Now, I did one part using a Japanese saw and another one using a jigsaw. And I'll be honest with you, I love the Japanese saw, but the jigsaw was just so much quicker. Both needed to be finished using a chisel, or more specifically in my case, butchered using a chisel, because I'm just not very good at it. To stabilize it and give it additional strength, I added a piece of wood between them. By the way, have I ever told you the good gospel of Torx screws? Because you see, I'm a professional Phillips screws and posi drive hater. They just frustrate me every time I use them. But not Torx screws. They just give me hope. Anyway, one of the critical items in this build is the hinge for the backrest. And what's really important is to be sure that the hole is exactly where it should be, because if you assemble it upside down or in any other way, it just won't fit. So pay close attention to this part. Now, the entire thing will spend quite a lot of time outside, so make sure to properly protect your wood. If you're using glue, make sure it's exterior rated, and if you're using untreated wood, make sure to properly treat it so that it won't grow bacteria and rot over time. I mean, it will do so at some point anyway, but much quicker if you don't secure it. Next assembly was to create a frame for the backrest, which was actually very simple. And if you're wondering if I'm watching Charlie in the background, yes, I really enjoy his random ramblings while I'm doing something. I mean, he's got so much watch time from me, it's actually crazy. To make sure that it's secure, I needed to create a hinge for the assembly. And I'll be honest, using a ratchet strap to hold it in place is a great hack for this stuff, especially if you haven't got that many clamps, like I do. Now, once it dried, I needed to cut one side at a 45-degree angle, and I'll be honest with you, it felt pretty sketchy to me. I don't know why, but I just didn't feel too confident with this cut. It might have been a good idea to do it before assembling it together. And I've done it the same with all boards at the top, because why not? To finish the backrest, I started to add the top boards, which initially I started doing using dowels, but I'll be honest with you, I realized pretty quickly that it would just take ages to do it this way. So what I recommend instead is just to screw it from the back, hopefully avoiding Phillips screws. It's just so much quicker this way. Now, for the hinge to work as a hinge, you need an actual hinge, which I realize is quite hilarious. I probably should have named this part differently in this video, but any hinge will do. I just grabbed one laying around in my garage and it was fine. Once that's done, it was time to focus on the legs, which I cut at an angle on a miter saw, and then at a 45-degree angle on a table saw. To actually join them to the main frame, I started by using dowels and then I added torque screws from the inside, which, I'll be honest with you, I do differently now. You see, those legs at some point will rot, due to being outside on the ground all of the time, and having just the torque screws without the dowels would make it so much easier to change them in the future. Now, to fully protect it, I painted it using a protective stain. This part is also quite important as this stain protects it from the weather and moisture, which outside there'll be plenty of. Next step was to add the longer boards at the top, which had to follow the same pattern as the boards on the backrest. Here I went with joining them using dowels, but really you could just use pocket screws and make this part much quicker. Also, I'm aware that this doesn't fit 100% correctly, but the backrest isn't properly assembled yet, and also I don't really mind it that much, especially as you won't really feel it when using it. Once it was all assembled and I had a sip of a non-alcoholic beer, it was time to finish the edges by adding a 45-degree chamfer. And I did this by using a router, but then again, it's not really necessary. Then I sanded it smooth and repainted the edges. By the way, I promise, the perfect advertisement of this beer, it just wasn't intentional. Very much the last thing to do was to assemble the backrest of the main structure, which was done by adding an 8mm bolt and a nylock nut between the holes in both parts. And that's pretty much it. Altogether, I spent under $100 and 1 weekend to get the entire thing done. It was a busy weekend, to be fair, and I used a lot of tools to make it easier, but it is all possible, and probably possible to do it much quicker. And I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you want a step-by-step instruction and a cut list, you can find it in the link below.